Good evening. Would like to call the meeting to order in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, PL 1975, Chapter 231. Adequate notice of this This is still a regular meeting, isn't it?
There's a special meeting.
A special meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Of the Board of Adjustment of the Township of Franklin has been provided. Would you call the roll?
Mr. Betterbid.
Here.
Mr. Grumman.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. McCracken. Here. Mr. Rich.
Here.
Mr. Shepherd. Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Rosenthal.
Here.
Mr. Reese. Mr. O'Connell.
Here.
Chairman Thomas.
Here, New Jersey Tabernacle, docket ZBA 13-00015. Use variance with site plan in which the applicant is proposing construction of a 3,935 square foot church at 8 Como Drive, 319 Cedar Grove Lane, Somerset, block 508.02, lots 42.01 and 43 in the R40 zone is carried to January 9th, 2014 with no further notification. If you're here for that application, we will not be hearing it tonight.
Bless you. Bless you.
The first one that we will hear, Wild Heart Bulk Land Supplies, docket ZBA 13-00016, hardship variance in which applicant is proposing to construct a garage at 211 Wilson Road, Somerset, block 417.01, lot 28 in the R40 zone. And who do we have one up?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, while the applicant is coming up, this is an application to replace a garage that was damaged in Sandy. And unfortunately, they had to tear it completely down. It had a pre-existing condition. Once he, being too close to the property line, unfortunately, once he tore it down, only the zoning board had the ability to grant him the variance. The one variance you need for that garage is there's a side yard setback, supposed to be a minimum of 25 feet. It was 10 feet. He's proposing to erect the new one at 10 feet. There's also an existing shed that's been there for quite a bit of time that he'll testify to that is supposed to be at 25 feet, and it's a little bit less than a foot. So those are the two variances that are needed.
Just to save time, to what extent is the new garage similar,
It's the same size.
same size?
Sir, can you make sure one of the microphones is on? It's two switches, I believe. Okay. I got to swear you in. If you'll raise your right hand, you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And your name for the record.
Adam Fibish.
And Adam, are you the owner of the property?
I am.
Okay. We just had one other question. I just want you to explain it for the record as to the applicant name being Wild Heart Bulk Landscape Supplies. What's that about?
They are my contractor. They're my building contractor.
Okay. But you're here, you're the owner, and you are the
Correct.
one seeking the relief. Okay.
That's right.
Okay, just so we understand up front, if there were part of this building still standing, we wouldn't be here. This would have just been I guess you could call it an administrative approval with the zoning office. So you're representing to us it's the same size and in the same footprint.
It is, exactly, yes.
And is it going to be used solely for a garage?
Yes.
For residential and all residential use?
Residential use only,
Is
yes.
there anything you need to tell us about?
No. It's exactly a replacement of what was there before. The reason it had to be completely raised is it was deemed unsafe. The fire department came out, taped it off. The insurance company came out and looked at it, and they said, yeah, this needs to come down right away. It was unsafe the way it was standing. So it was completely removed, and all I'm looking to do is replace what was there with a comparable structure, nothing more, nothing less.
On the issue of the shed, Vince is gone, do you know maybe?
Well, there actually is a hardship variance already granted to me for that shed.
Then that's not relevant.
Yeah, I don't believe it is relevant.
Fine, and that was what I was going to ask, if
Yeah.
that I was either a pre-existing or
Yeah, in
you
fact,
had approvals for
yes, exactly.
that. Okay.
Just lastly, Mr. Chairman, if you look at the appearance of the existing or the previously existing garage on page 2 of my report, then you compare it to what they're proposing, it's a very comparable shed or garage in terms of not only the footprint, but the size, the height, and the appearance.
Okay, any other board questions?
Any utilities in there?
There is electric and electric hookup, but no plumbing.
Any other board questions? Open to the public. Is there anyone who'd like to make a comment or ask a question about this application? If not, we'll close. Anything from the board in current way of a motion?
I move approval of the application of applicant Wild Heart Bulk Landscape Supplies, docket number ZBA 13-00016.
Second.
For the reconstruction of a garage with a side yard setback of 25, with 10 feet proposed. And the shed is irrelevant, so I'm not dealing with that.
We have a second?
Second.
Any other comments or questions? All aboard.
Eamon Betterbid,
Four.
Laura Grauman,
Yes?
Donald Johnson,
4.
Bruce McCracken,
Yes.
Alan Rich,
4.
Gary Rosenthal,
Yes.
and Chairman Thomas.
Yes, and good luck with it.
Thank you very much.
You can leave that on. Thanks.
Okay, Center School ZBA 13-00022, use variance with site plan, which the applicant's proposing to convert a 3-story building into a school use at 2 Riverview Drive, Somerset, block 51.03, lot 310 in the M1 zone.
Did we do this one? Now they're in with the site plan.
Perfect timing. My architect just arrived. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Peter Lanford appearing on behalf of the applicant. This is an application for a site plan approval to modify an existing building which was previously used as an office facility and was owned and operated by Software House International on Apgar. I'm sorry, Riverview Drive. My client is the contract purchaser of the subject property. By way of brief background, the Center School is a school that has been in existence since the 1980s. Originally started in Bound Brook, moved to Highland Park. They operated there in their own building in Highland Park. That building had a fire. Building was destroyed. They reopened and are currently operating on a rental basis in Branchburg, and now are looking to find a permanent home again, and they've selected this building to move their facility. The Center School is a school that takes students from numerous school districts who have certain special needs and gives them an education through high school. The children are actually anywhere from kindergarten up to age 21. And that's a little bit of the background. I will have the project manager go into a little bit more detail. The building itself will undergo, is going to be testified to by the architect, some minor renovations, and there will be some renovations to the exterior, to the site plan, by way of removal of impervious coverage, by removal of parking spaces to allow for a better use of the facility. I do have 4 witnesses, but I will try to be very quick with each of them. I think it's probably best that I start with the architect, Mr. Mystery, so he can tell you the changes to the building.
Okay, if you'll raise your right hand for me, do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And your name for the record?
Yogesh Mistry, Y-O-G-E-S-H-M-I-S-T-R-Y.
Mr. Mystery, you're a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey.
Yes, I am.
and you've appeared before this board on more than one occasion?
Yes, I have.
That's fine.
Okay. Mr. Mistry, you were retained by the center school to design or the renovations to the building for its operation, is that correct?
That's correct.
Can you, I guess we can mark your exhibit, and I guess your exhibit is really the architectural plans that were submitted in conjunction with this application?
Yeah, there's, consists of 3 sheets which were submitted, and essentially they're the reproductions made on this board. It's sheet EX 2.01, sheet A 2.01, and sheet A 2.02.
Do you want me to mark those separately, Mr. Bradshaw, or just one exhibit?
One's fine. So they're not even, I mean, they're not colorized.
No,
They're what we have.
correct.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Mistry, as I indicated in my opening, the building is a 3-story building, is that correct?
It's a 3-story, currently a 3-story office building.
Okay, and as I indicated in my opening comments, there are going to be some renovations to the exterior of the building. Can you indicate briefly what those renovations are?
Sure. To the exterior, I'm referring now to sheet A 2.01. On the lower portion of the page is the first floor plan. As far as the exterior goes, on the west side of the building, or if you're standing on River Drive side, looking at the building on the left side, there is an existing set of entry doors, and there's a small canopy. We want to maintain that as an entrance, and we want to put a little bit larger canopy because that's going to be the primary entrance for the school. We also want to make it handicapped accessible, so there's a proposal for a handicap ramp and a set of small stairs in that area.
And the canopy itself will be of the same height that it currently exists? We're not going to make the canopy any higher, or?
Yeah, now I'm referring to sheet A 2.02, and there's a little enlargement of that canopy, the existing shown on the right and the proposed on the left. It's the same height, it's 8 feet off the ground. It's a little bit larger, and the signage has increased a little bit. The existing sign is about 10 square feet. You could also see it in the photo. The canopy is going to be a little wider now, but the sign is a little bit larger at 25 square feet.
Okay,
Just really to designate that as the main entry.
thank you. And any other changes to somebody who would be driving by the building or around the property that would be noticeable from the exterior of the building?
Yeah, on the east side or on the right side facing from Riverview Drive, we're putting a small landing and a set of stairs, and that's really as a fire exit, because of the arrangement of what's going on inside, it created the requirement for an extra egress on that side.
So there will be one more door on that side of the building?
A door and a little landing and stairs,
okay.
about 3 or 4 stairs.
And other than that, the building will be as is?
Yeah, all the other changes are internal to the building, not counting what the site engineer will talk about.
Okay. And the building now, you've been through it in its current condition?
Yeah, it's it's like a Class B type office building. It's been vacant for a little bit, so it's kind of starting to get a little dusty and stuff. But otherwise, if somebody wanted to move in, it's just needs to be cleaned up and be operational as an office building. But we're going to go in and kind of rearrange the spaces to make it more functional as a school building.
All right, can you just give the board the Reader's Digest version of what's going to happen on the interior of the building?
Sure. Again, just referring back to the first floor plan on A201, the main entry is going to be on the west side. That's kind of their access point for the staff and so forth. But when you come in, there's going to be a multi-purpose room on one side, kind of kindergarten school area on the left side. As you walk further through, there's the central core of the building where the toilets are, elevators are. That's going to remain the same. There's also an atrium, and that's going to remain as an atrium. They do want to add a commercial kitchen and like a cafeteria or dining area for the students. They will be cooking at the site. Further down the plan, there's an area for preschool students. It's 3 to 5 year old students. And then there's some other admissions, orientation office areas. There's a wood shop and a robotics lab and some smaller classrooms on the end. And then there's the existing loading dock, which is, I mean, they don't really need it as a loading dock, but it'll be used as a drop-off point for the students. On the second floor, again, they're just more program areas relative to a school. There's
Wait a minute, can I interrupt you? Your voice went way down
Sorry.
about the loading dock. It will be used as a dropping-off point, is that what you said?
Yes, I think the site engineer will talk about it, but that will be a drop-off point for the students to come in. Even though this is the main entrance on the west side, the east side would be, there's an access door and an entry into the building on that
Okay,
side.
thank you.
On the second floor, there's more functional spaces. There's a kind of an indoor play area. There's a yoga aerobics room, science lab, art room, music, and there's some conference rooms in the back, and then just the kind of what they're calling a middle school, and there's just a group of about 6 classrooms associated to that. And I mean, keep in mind, this is not a typical school. You know, although some of the classrooms are a little bit larger, the number of students in each classroom would be significantly less just because of the, you know, the type of students that they serve. So, you know, a classroom might only have 8 to 10 students in it. And so the staff to student ratio is very high. And then on the third floor, they're actually keeping a lot of the existing walls that are on the third floor because much of that area is office area, and they're going to continue to use that as their business administration office area. There is a portion in the front that they're calling career exploration transition. I guess, you know, there'd be like guidance counselors, things like that. But again, they're just kind of reusing the office space as really office space again. On the other side of the building, on the third floor, is kind of their high school wing, and they're going to have, you know, classrooms for the high school students, a computer lab, some high school offices, high school resolution area. So that's kind of the high school side. So in a nutshell, those are some of the program areas. We haven't worked out all the details, but in general, that's the layout that we work with the director on.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. I have no further questions.
Any questions?
You mentioned office, administration office spaces on the third floor?
Yes, for the staff and the directors, vice principals, yes.
You mentioned the first move from Highland Park was because of a fire?
Yeah, they had a fire a few years ago. Their building in Highland Park burned down, so.
And then they went to Bonbrook? No?
Branchburg,
Branchburg, okay. And from there to here?
hopefully here.
Has the Branchburg location been outgrown, or?
They are tenants in Branchburg. They have a lease. They don't own the property. They're going to buy this building they owned in Highland Park, and they would prefer, obviously, to have ownership of their property.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Right. I have a concern. In lieu of what's going on nationwide with our schools and so forth and so on, you said the main entrance, if you can turn back. You said the canopy, the main entrance, and on one side of that will be a kindergarten class?
The elementary, kindergarten, yes, kindergarten.
Right, and then the other side is the all-purpose area?
Multi-purpose, correct.
All right, and there's no security administration on that level? That's the first floor level.
Well, there'll be security. There's no administration offices except on, when you come across the elevator bank, there is an area for, some offices. There'll be security here, but, obviously there's a set of doors that, could get locked or buzzed in, but currently there's no proposal for offices there.
You don't see anything wrong with that?
We had worked this layout, and obviously the director knows her school better than I know her program, so, she won't, that's the,
You've talked to Mr. House about all this? With the smoke alarms and all that stuff?
Mr. House issued a report, other than relocating a fire hydrant. He's reviewed the plans. Obviously, we haven't given them full building plans, but they'll ultimately be reviewed once this is approved. And if I may, Mr. Johnson, the director, the principal of the school was supposed to be here to testify. We have another representative, but the principal's getting an award this evening, and I can sort of explain to you how security or how everything works. Unlike most schools where buses come and drop off children, the bus pulls up, the children get out, they go into the building, and they go to wherever they have to go. The way they currently operate, the way they always have operated, is the buses come and basically park outside with the students, and the buses, they're all small buses or vans, and sometimes even cars. They all wait outside at 8:25 when the school opens. The faculty comes, all the students come into the building and are escorted into the building at the same time with faculty members. So they are all supervised and controlled. Once they're in the building is basically closed, other than if, there's outside areas if students are going outside, but they're basically contained within the building. There are offices on the first floor for some personnel, so there will be personnel office on the first floor also. But basically, everybody comes into the building at the same time, everybody leaves at the same time.
Any other questions?
And what type of special needs are these?
There are various special needs. These are kids that either have some learning disabilities, not autism, but other either reading disabilities. They have psychological problems. They're suffering from depression. Some of the kids may be cutters, that they're not fitting into the school itself, the school that they attend. So they get moved to this school for their education. Most of them are going through a regular high school program. They get a high school diploma. Many of them, when they graduate, go on to college. Some of them do go into the workforce, but basically, there are people, these are young men, young women who are having problems within the school system that are being sent to this school because they have issues that need to be dealt with.
Now, that's at the high school level, now.
All the way
All
up.
the way through. Are you dealing also with neurological kinds of problems, like cerebral palsy, or, you know what I'm talking about, where the physical, medical problems?
There are no children there, and I've had 3 meetings with the principal. There are no children there with physical problems. All of the children, are ambulatory. I mean, if somebody hurts themselves on the playground, they may have a sprained ankle, but basically...
No, I'm talking about wheelchair band.
None, no. There are none of those. So it's all children that have other issues that are not fitting into the school system.
So it sounds like security is going to be a big issue then.
In the event, in what regard, to keep them contained within the building?
Well, inside the building, like,
And I questioned Ms. Fiorentino as the principal, and they said they really don't have problems within the building over the course of any given year. If they have 1 or 2 incidences within the building that need to be addressed, that's about it. Again, it's a small number. If the building's 80,000 square feet, the number of students is anywhere between 100 and 130. So we're not talking about a large student population, and there are 50 staff members between administration all the way down to custodial, but there's psychologists, psychiatrists, learning disability specialists, so the student-to-teacher ratio is fairly small. So there is a lot of hands-on, and you're not in your typical classroom where there's 10 or 15 or 20 students. And again, they range from kindergarten all the way through high school. Some of the high school kids, by the time they get out, are 20 or 21 years old, so it's a wide range.
Any other questions?
Just one question, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification, when you apply for building permits, right now, obviously, it's an office use. When this is converted, it's going to be a different use group for the construction code, correct?
Correct.
So that would mean that when you do submit this for permits, there's going to be different requirements in terms of egress and
Sure.
lighting and, other things within the, signage, et cetera, within the building.
Correct.
So the reason I asked that question is, this is not related to the security question, it was a question before, that when, they're not just moving into an office building. They're going to have to make a number of changes internally because the code changes. Right now, it's built as an office building. When they submit for construction permits, they're going to have to change things internally to meet the requirements for is it educational?
E-use, yeah.
E-use for,
Yeah.
so there's different specific requirements that they're going to have to meet when they submit for building permits.
In fact, we had a meeting this morning with the building department, the fire official, subcode official, and, the other members of the building department. And we essentially walked through the plans and, and I did do a code review prior to this, and we had discussions on, what's going to be the areas that need to be upgraded and so forth. So we understand that, after, if we obtain this approval, there's still a whole second step of designing for the building code upgrades.
Listening to the comments about security, is our concern from board members in terms of security a concern of intruders getting into the building, or security in a sense within the building in terms of controlling the student population? Because this is a school that I have had some experience with that has an excellent reputation in terms of what results come out of it, and the security within or controlling the kids is something they need to be very well aware of, because your public school is not going to be paying the tuition, to send kids to a place where it's a non-learning situation or a situation where their disabilities aren't being dealt with. So I don't have any concerns about within the building, as long as, you're telling me the doors are locked, people can't walk in, it's a controlled access from outside, inside, and actually from those inside, not able to easily get out. Not that it's a jail, I don't mean that, but it's that security that I'm concerned about. Again, not within the building. So you do have someone watching the front door, or?
No, of course, there'll be control points at the doorways, as well as closed-circuit cameras.
Or card entrance and exit or something, maybe that's someone else's domain.
I don't know all of the intricate details, to be honest with you, Mr. Thomas, other than when I spoke to Ms. Fiorentino, she indicated that there is security both controlling people going in and out. I'm not going to represent to the board as cards or people. I just don't know that answer.
Okay, the other thing is, you make a note that Mr. Caldwell arrived approximately 7:55.
Noted.
Any other questions? We'll open to the public. Is there anyone out there who would like to ask this witness questions concerning his testimony? Okay, we'll close, and next witness.
Ms. Iskowitz.
Okay, I'm going to swear you in. If you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
And state and spell your last name for us.
Pull the microphone closer.
Rosemarie Iskowitz. Rosemarie is two words, R-O-S-E, capital M-A-R-I-E, Iskowitz, I-S-K-O-W-I-T-Z.
Ms. Iskowitz, you can have a seat.
Thank you.
Ms. Iskowitz, you were retained by the center school, and you're the project manager for this transition from the existing facility to the new facility.
Yes.
And in that capacity, have you had an opportunity to have conversations with Ms. Fiorentino, who is the principal and have had an opportunity to visit the existing facility.
Yes, I have.
Okay, and can you indicate, based on your discussions and your observations, first of all, the number of students that are currently at the existing facility?
Yes, I believe the number is a little over 100, 102, 103.
Okay, and at the new facility and having the discussions and having, obviously, subject to getting all the state approvals, the number can increase
Correct.
and to 130?
Yes.
Okay. And how do students get to the school?
The students are sent to the school from the various districts based upon the different needs that they might have that can be better addressed by the center school, the facilities that they have available, the resources that they have available to better assist the students, and that's how they usually make their way.
Okay. And when they come to the school, are they bused, or how do students get there?
The majority of the students are bused. They are small buses, vans, or car services. Many of the districts do a carpool type of an arrangement where they might have a few districts nearing each other send children together in a car service. I believe there's about 30 to 35 buses that are, or buses, vans, or car services that are coming through, but it does change as the student population changes.
And do you know where these students come from?
Yes, they come from as far north as Morris County, and I believe we have some students right now from Ocean County.
Okay. Are there any students from Franklin Township in the school?
Yes, there are 10 students from Franklin Township that attend the school right now.
Okay. And the numbers of the students and where they come from can vary from year to year, is that correct?
Yes, it is correct.
Okay. And this is the one thing that I didn't discuss with Ms. Fiorentino, and on your visits to the site, maybe you can address Mr. Johnson's question. Do you know what they do as far as security at their current facility?
Yes, I was actually at the school today, and similar to other Branchburg locations, they have a buzz-in system where they have I should say, I would assume they have a camera, but I don't know that for sure. But they do buzz you in, and then you need to go down to the office and sign in. And as far as security, other than that, I'm not aware of other security
Okay.
that they have.
Now, in reviewing the operations of the school, do you know what the hours of operation are?
The hours of the school are 8:30 to 2:35.
And are there any evening activities that take place at the school?
Once in a while, there'll be an evening activity, such as a family social event or an assembly, but they're few and far between.
So by and large, the students get there at 8:30, and by 2:30, the buses pick them up and they're gone?
Yes.
Okay. And the operation that's currently taking place in Branchburg will be similar to the operation at this facility? Hours are not going to change, and other than perhaps the increase of some students, everything else will remain the same?
Correct.
And again, just for the record, since I wasn't sworn, I indicated that basically the faculty members and administration, cooks, custodial, whatever, the total number will be 50, is that correct?
Right now, I believe the number is 50, and the intent would be for it to be potentially higher at the new school to accommodate more to the additional students.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Just to point out that Mr. Reese arrived at 8:05.
Question, are there any after-school activities that would keep students and faculty there after 2:30?
Yes, that's certainly a valid point. I believe there are after-school activities. I don't have the details to speak to them, but it certainly, I believe that they do.
So, so as you sit here, then you can't exactly tell us how late those activities would keep
That's correct.
I can, Ms. Croman.
Oh.
I did ask the question. Basically, 95% of the students are gone at 2:30. If some of them have, and again, it's because of the busing situation, they have to get out of there. If there's this issue with a student or they have to deal with something, they may stay a little bit later. All the faculty stays to a minimum. They always have daily meetings after the students leave at 2:30. Faculty stays till a minimum of 3 or a little after 3. Some faculty members may be there till 5 or 6 o'clock at night, depending on what they're doing. But basically, 95% of the students are gone at 2:30, and faculty could be there anywhere from 3 to 6.
Okay.
Would the new
What came to mind was yearbook or plays or who knows what extracurricular activities, so.
Because the students
It's-
get bused, they really
that
don't
won't
stay.
happen. Okay.
And also,
Would the new school-
you labeled on the site plan, the area of the parking lot, you're going to turn into a quote athletic field. I know this school does not compete in sports with other schools, so there's not going to be other outside people or schools visiting. I'm assuming that's just for use during the school day and the students' use, not for competitive.
Yeah, that's an open field for the kids to go out and play. They don't have teams, they don't have athletic events, they don't have interscholastic competition of any kind.
It just gives it a different connotation. That's not what the use is when it's labeled that. But- Other questions?
Yeah, just a question of, when was the school founded, and how long has it been in operation?
It was in the 1980s, I'm sorry, 1971.
1971, so it's been around a long time. And has it been growing steadily?
Yes, yes.
And part of your new location is to accommodate the growth
Yes.
to 130 students possibly?
Plus they rent and they want to own.
Now, would that 130 be the max?
Yes.
Other questions? This is not I'm assuming this, you can correct me if I'm wrong, which often happens. This is not a school that's going to grow to 500 kids, at least in one site.
There are numerous schools, and again, talking to Ms. Fiorentino, around the state similar to this that handle children that have special needs. She has to go get the approval from the state even to go to 130. But basically, this design and the size of the building will allow her to grow to 130. There's no intention to go beyond that.
All right, any other question? Anything? All right, anyone in the audience that would like to ask this witness a question concerning her testimony? Okay, we'll close to the public. Next witness.
Mr. Reynolds?
For the last 15 years, they were my customers in my business. Yeah, I know them from Highland Park.
Solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and your name for the record?
Jeff Reynolds.
Kids are from.
Mr. Reynolds, what is your occupation?
I'm a landscape architect, and I work for a civil engineering firm and a project manager,
Okay, and what firm do you work for?
the Reynolds Group Incorporated.
Okay, and your firm prepared the site plan, which was prepared by you in part along with Mr. Ardman?
That's correct.
Okay, and actually, in going back in history, it wasn't your firm that did the original approvals for this building many years ago?
Yes, that's correct also.
You know what's bad is now, I used to present development applications with his father. This is what
You're
really
getting old.
This is what really bothers me.
On your age now.
Mr. Reynolds, you prepared, along with Mr. Ardman, the site plan that is before the board at this time, is that correct?
That is correct.
And you have a colored rendering of the proposed plan, and I will mark that as A2. And that is a colored rendering of what is known as SP2 in the site plan that was submitted to the board, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you briefly just take us through what's on the subject property at the present time, and then we can go into what we're changing?
Presently, it's a vacant three-story office building, which is bound on three sides. It has three frontages, one on Weston Canal Road, one on Apgar, and the third would be on Riverview Drive, where the front of the building currently faces, and you have access to the site. It's approximately a 6-acre site that is raised up well above Weston Canal Road, so it really isn't visible from Weston Canal or even Apgar Drive, for that matter. You really can't see the building until you get onto Riverview Drive itself. And Riverview Drive is also a cul-de-sac that is, if you continue down the driveway, a cul-de-sac is just past the property.
And on the site at the present time, in addition to the building, there are two entrances to the subject property?
There are two entrances that currently exist, one on the west side and one in the rear, which would be on the north. And there also currently is approximately 250 parking stalls on the property.
Okay. Now, going through what I marked as A2, can you take the board through what the changes are that we are proposing as part of this application?
Sure. On the west side, as the architect had mentioned, for the main entrance, we wanted to make this handicap accessible. So we put the handicap parking over here in a small little spot, and we created a accessible way through to the building, creating a nice ramp on one side and also steps on the other. So there's a dual entrance to the same main front door. And as you come around to the rear of the property, we've gotten rid of what used to be parking, and we've created a wonderful patio in the back for outdoor seating and eating or gathering areas. And adjacent to that, we have a playground, which is for the younger kids. We have two playground apparatuses, one for younger children and another for a little bit older kids. And everything is handicap accessible. And we also have a rubber surfaced area for playing foursquare and hopscotch. And we also have lawn area and a nice seating wall here so that people can keep an eye on the kids and sit down and enjoy the atmosphere. This whole entire area is also bound by a fence, a 6-foot-high tubular aluminum fence. It'll be ornamental type and it'll look very nice. Then once you come, we have gates that enter from the east and the west. And once you go to cross the driveway, this is where we eliminated nearly an acre of asphalt. We eliminated over 100 and some odd cars there and created an open grass play area for the kids. And that, again, is also surrounded by a 6-foot-tall, the same matching fence.
Is that fence see-through, or can you see
Yes.
what's going on from outside?
Yes, I think the ballasts of the fence are 4 inches on center approximately per code. So you'll be able to look through it, no problem. And it will be secure. So it'll be very nice. And then we created a basketball court to shoot some baskets, a small picnic area. And then we have the other entrance, the brand-new entrance on the east side, as the architect had discussed before, which was required. And then we created a sidewalk that goes around the entire perimeter so that the kids can walk around. And also when the buses drop off in the mornings and pick up in the afternoon, this is where the buses would be stacked all the way around here to line up.
And therefore, if they're stacked around the building, they have various ways to get it. They're not all going to be using one entrance into the building?
No, not at all. They've got access here. They could come through here if the school would let them in the rear. They could come this way, or they could come through this way. I don't think they would enter through the loading dock area.
No. Okay, but there is an entrance on that far side?
Yes, there is.
Okay, and basically, how many linear feet of stacking do you have for these cars or vans?
approximately 600 lineal feet of stacking.
And would that be more than adequate to handle 30 to 35 of either the small school buses or cars or vans?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. At the present time, there is two-way circulation around the building, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and one of the staff comments, I believe it was from Mr. Healy, recommended that we consider making everything circulate around the building with a one-way pattern, is that correct?
That is correct.
And can that in fact be accomplished, and did we discuss that with the principal, and in fact, she's supportive of that?
Yes, it's a very good idea.
So what we'll do is we'll re-sign and we'll mark everything so that everybody will enter as you're facing the building from the left side and work its way around.
If this will be one-way traffic traveling around here, and Mr. Healy also recommended that we angle this parking so that it makes it appear as one-way and nobody would get confused.
Okay, and we will accommodate Mr. Healy with respect to that request.
Yes.
Okay, also, and I forgot to ask, is there anything that's going to be changing to the front of the building on Riverview Drive?
Yes, there is. There's going to be an edible garden area in the front here behind what currently exists a dry-laid stone wall, which is actually very pretty. And also, there's an existing sign in the right-of-way of the road here that we're going to move onto our property.
Okay. The sign itself, and you don't know how it got there, but there's an existing sign. At the present time, we are going to relocate it onto the property to get it out of the public right-of-way, correct?
That's correct.
Will it meet the setback requirements of the zone?
No, it will not.
So we will need a variance for the setback?
Yes, we will.
And how far back are we proposing to set the sign from our property line?
We were proposing 3 feet.
Okay. And the sign that's currently there that we're relocating, does it meet the size requirements of the zone?
No, it does not. It's a 6x8 sign, 48 square feet. I think the requirement is 25 feet.
So we would request that that variance also be granted.
I think that might result from a change in use. I think office permits up to 50. They're using the new sign, the existing sign. The limitation for schools is 25. So that's the need for the variance.
Thank you, Mr. Healy. Now, in addition to removing the asphalt and the parking area to the right, I assume that parking area was illuminated?
Yes, it was. There are lights around the perimeter of the field, because basically we're putting the field limits to where the perimeter of the parking used to be. So the lights that were already out there are going to remain. The ones that were interior lighting the parking areas are going to be removed, and there's going to be one light relocated from here closer to the driveway to illuminate the drive.
Okay. Any other changes in the lighting around the building?
No.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to, well, let me go back up. Stormwater management, there was a stormwater management system in place with respect to the original approval?
Yes.
Okay, and we are not proposing any changes to it because, as a matter of fact, we are decreasing impervious coverage and not adding any impervious coverage, correct?
That's correct. The utilities will remain as they are. We will remove a couple of inlets here. We will sheet drain it to where it's been going all of these years to a detention basin over here to the northeast.
Okay. You've had an opportunity to review the engineering report prepared by Mr. Hauk dated October 30th, 2013. Is that correct?
Yes, I have.
And his report is a report consisting of 4 pages. There are a couple of things that we are asking the board not to require us to do. The first is on page 2, item number 3, show the location of any pipe sizes, pipe types of existing utilities. Are we changing any of the utilities, any of the pipes that are going in and out of the building?
No, we are not.
So whatever is there, we're not proposing to change anything?
No.
And I assume if this building was approved and inspected, the plans denoting where those pipes are and everything else are somewhere in this building in either the construction department or the archives?
There should be some record drawing somewhere
Yeah.
of where the pipes are.
And the only way we would be able to provide that information would be to start digging up the entire site, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Item number 8, you've heard involves the issue of a traffic statement that we provided, and they want a report indicating the trip generation within the peak hours of operation. Obviously, this facility was previously used as an office building, correct?
That's correct.
With 200-plus parking spaces. Is it fair to say that the proposed use will generate significantly less traffic than the previously approved use in the building as it operated prior to today?
Absolutely. We're proposing 104 total parking stalls.
Okay.
And the teachers are going to come in and park, and they're going to stay there until they leave. It's not going to be in and out.
Okay, and actually the buses, there are no buses during PM peak hour because all the buses will be gone by about 2:30. There will be the buses during the AM peak hour. Would a traffic study of any kind provide any further illumination to whether this project should be approved?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Now, can you indicate, item number 9 talks about the drive aisle. The drive aisle around the subject property currently is how wide?
It's 24 feet wide.
Okay. And that was, I assume, the requirements back in the 1980s when this was built?
That's correct.
Okay, and it was able to handle two-way traffic?
Yes.
Okay, so if we make this one-way, do you feel that there's sufficient room, even with the small buses parking for vehicles to travel around the site?
Yes.
Is there any need to widen those drive aisles, in your opinion?
Not in my opinion, no.
Okay.
The clarification on that. So the site, all of the internal drive aisles are 24 feet,
That's correct.
like including to the left, and then even over there, and then even the main access drive?
Yep, these are
On the left
24
side.
feet wide, yep.
Okay. Okay, okay, so that's understandable. So your point being that that was, as it was approved and designed when this was originally built, as an office building. And then along the one-way configuration that you're going to do, the drive aisle, how wide is that drive aisle going to be? You're going to have an area for bus stacking, and then the one-way circulation. How wide is that? That's going to be 24 feet as well? To the right, I'm sorry, so I'm talking about
The drive aisle itself,
the driveway to the right of the building. Is that's going to remain 24
that
feet?
is 24 feet, yes.
Okay, and just for the record, how much room do you need for the buses, and then how much would be for the car?
Well, the buses are approximately 8 feet wide.
Okay, and then the car is
Okay.
going to be about the same, so it'd be more than enough for one-way circulation with bus stacking and then one lane of
Right.
vehicle movement.
And as a practical matter, Mr. Healy, and again, I will review this with Ms. Fiorentino, when the buses are there, basically, there are no cars, there are not going to be any cars
Yeah.
because all the faculty is still working.
Yep.
So the only ones that are going to be on the site using the driveways at 2:30 in the afternoon are the buses.
Yep.
And, there may be a straggler who comes in, a salesperson or something who may be leaving, but by and large, there is no vehicular traffic when the buses are leaving, so the only ones using the drive aisles are the buses.
And that's wide enough for emergency vehicles too, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I assume so. It sounds like it would be, plus the plans, when they revise the plans, they're going to go back to staff anyway. So if there's an issue, they'll point that out.
Okay.
I can't see how that would be a problem, though.
Mr. House, I'm sure, would have pointed it out if he wanted it wider.
Well, but in all fairness, Mr. House, he hasn't seen the one-way configuration. So, but the plan will go back to him, and if there's an issue, he'll point that out.
Yep. One last comment, item number 24, the existing roof leader connections, same issue as before, they are where they are, we're not proposing to change them.
Yes, that would be a very difficult task to dig those up and find where they go.
Okay. Thank you, I have no further questions.
Go ahead, board questions?
Yeah, just with respect to Mr. Healy's report, there was just one other item that I don't think you addressed, which was item 3C.
I thought we gave Mr. Healy enough.
Well, let me ask you this. Other than
yes.
Mr. Houck's report, are there
No,
anything else?
yeah,
in any of the-
everything in your report is fine, Mr. Healy.
You're going to comply with all of those
We
comments?
would never argue with anything that you request.
I think 3C, we would have to, I can sit down with them and explain my
Okay.
comment to them
Yeah.
about that.
We'll work that out. That's not an issue.
They have a sidewalk going into a tree, so. We'll figure that detail out with the applicant.
Well, I can explain that. That was only meant for drop-off of students,
Yeah.
okay? And they're going to walk to the door. Nobody's going to get dropped off right where this tree is.
All right, well, we'll talk.
Any other questions? We'll open to the public. Is there anyone who would like to ask this witness questions concerning his testimony? And we'll close.
I'd like to call my planner, Mr. O'Brien.
But, Mr. Chairman, just real quick, there are a number of other reports. John House has a report. I'm sorry if we just asked this, I'm having a brain freeze, but you have no objections to any of the other staff reports?
All the other staff reports are fine. I thought I said that, but if I didn't, we're fine.
All right, thank you.
Okay, do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and your name for the record.
Kevin O'Brien.
He still has his license, right?
We think.
He's becoming as regular as you are lately, so.
Oh, God forbid.
Mr. O'Brien, you are familiar with the proposed use at the subject property,
Yes,
and you've been here to hear the testimony of all of the witnesses that have testified earlier this evening. Is that correct?
yes,
And we are here this evening to seek a D1 use variance to convert the existing school into, or the existing vacant office building into a school. Is that correct?
that's correct.
And as a result of the D variance, there are certain things that we need to do, and there's certain things that the board has to consider in granting that use variance. Is that correct?
Yes,
Can you go over them with the board, please?
sure. The center school currently educates 103 students from kindergarten through high school, as you've heard the testimony, and currently has 50 staff members. Should they be relocated to the proposed location, they hope to increase that number to 130 students and 55 staff members. 10 of the students currently come from Franklin, and they hope to keep that same percentage in the future. A school is an inherently beneficial use. You've heard that term many times before. An inherently beneficial use is one that serves the general welfare of all the people of the state of New Jersey. And a school is one that, by educating our youngsters, serves that general welfare. The current use that is being proposed to school is one that is less intense than other uses that are allowed in the zone, such as manufacturing, laboratories, industrial parks, offices, hotels. Personal storage is allowed, as is indoor recreation. Northern New Jersey, as you know, has a very high office vacancy rate, over 25% currently. This is a vacant office building. It's been vacant for some time, and putting a school here would be considered an adaptive reuse of an existing vacant building, putting a use that is worthwhile into it, and making use of this building that is currently vacant. The proposed use is one that is particularly suitable for the site. This has excellent roadway access. You've heard about the transportation to and from the school, the use of buses from as far as Morris and Ocean counties. So having access to the highway network is very important to them, and their locale near 287, as well as other major thoroughfares, is very important and helps make this site particularly suitable.
In reviewing the master plan of Franklin Township, does the board have certain elements of the master plan that are being addressed by this application?
One of the goals of the community facilities plan element is, quote, provide adequate community services and facilities to serve the needs of all current and future residents in the township. And this certainly does provide a community facility that does serve the needs of the township.
Okay. And also, for the board to grant a use variance, the municipal land use law has certain goals and objectives, and does this proposed application serve any of those goals?
Yes, and because this is an inherently beneficial use, we don't have to go through the standard proofs of showing that there's positive criteria and negative criteria, but rather there's a different way of doing it, and we'll go through that in a moment through the secret balancing test. But even though we don't have to prove that there are special reasons that are rooted in the municipal land use law, this application does indeed support the municipal land use law in a number of ways, such as in Goal A for Alpha, which is to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Item F for Foxtrot, to encourage the appropriate and efficient expenditure of public funds by the coordination of public development with land use policies. And item G for Golf, to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of uses. And this application is consistent with those above passages by providing an inherently beneficial school.
There is also a requirement to show that there is no negative impact. And in reviewing this application, what did you do to determine whether this application would have any negative impact?
And the negative impact is the crux of the matter that's in front of you, because the proofs revolve around whether or not there is a negative impact. And because this is inherently beneficial, this is not looked upon as a regular standard D1 use variance for a use that is not allowed in a zone, such as a gas station in a residential area. Instead, because this is inherently beneficial, we're supposed to go through the seek a balancing test, and that's a 4-step question which discusses the negative criteria and the negative impact, if any, that the application would have upon the surrounding area and the township as a whole. And the first question to ask as part of that balancing test is to identify the public interest at stake, and in this case, the public interest is providing an inherently beneficial school for special needs students. The second point is to identify any detrimental effects, and in this case, I don't see how there would be any detriment to the surrounding commercial uses, nor any impact upon the other permitted uses, such as hotels or office buildings, which could go here. The proposed use of a school is a low-intensity use, which is going to be working other peak hours rather than the roadway peak hours, and that will have a different impact upon the area and less of an impact. Mr. Healy has shown in his report the extent of buffering in the area, which you've seen in the photographs, and lot cover will be significantly reduced in order to accommodate the playground and remove a large amount of parking. The third step is for the board to decide if there are detrimental effects, and if there are, what reasonable conditions can be placed upon the application that would make it a better one. And in this case, because there are no identifiable detrimental effects, there are no conditions for the board to consider. And then lastly, the board should consider the positive and negative criteria by balancing the public interest against the public detriment. And in this case, the public interest of providing the school is weighed against the detriment, and I haven't been able to identify any detrimental effects upon the area or the township, so I believe that the benefits of granting the variance under the balancing test would be overwhelming.
Okay, based on your review of the zoning ordinance of Franklin Township, the master plan of Franklin Township, the municipal land use law, the testimony that was presented this evening, and the plans that were submitted in support of this application, have you received a conclusion, reached a conclusion concerning whether the board should grant the requested variance?
Yes, and in accordance with the balancing test, by finding that there are no detrimental effects of having this use in this area, and instead finding that there will be positive aspects to that use, such as removing the impervious, putting a use here that is not as intense as other allowable uses, and having something that is going to have a very limited traffic impact, I believe that the public benefits of providing a school for special needs students outweigh any detriments, and that this application can be granted without substantial detriment to the zone plan and without substantial impairment of the zone plan and zoning ordinance.
Okay, and very briefly, the bulk variances as far as the size of the sign and the location of the sign that we are relocating out of the right-of-way, can you indicate to the board whether you feel that that variance can be granted?
This is an existing sign that was approved for the prior use, and it's only because of the change in use, as Mr. Healy has pointed out, that the sign, until today, has been conforming. Should this application be approved, it will be non-conforming. So therefore, a variance would be needed for it. And in fact, the applicant is going to make the situation better because the sign is currently in the right-of-way, and it will be moved entirely upon the applicant's property. So therefore, I don't see any detriment to the granting of that variance.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Anything from the board?
I just had one. There was a question here, let's see, applicants required to obtain approvals or a letter of no interest from the following agencies. One of them is the Franklin Township Police Department, and we had no report at this time. Does that mean that they didn't get a copy of this, or they weren't asked to look?
No, they received a copy, and Mr. Hauk's report incorporates they spoke, and anything that needed to be done, and I don't know if it was or any, but it would have been included in Mr. Hauk's report. They had the conversation.
They did have the conversation?
Yes, yes.
So we're not expecting a report from them?
We will not get a report from them, no. But they were provided it, and then the officer in charge, sergeant in charge, spoke to Carl, and that was incorporated in his report.
Okay.
Any other board questions?
Just real quick, your testimony with regard to the variances, that applies to both with respect to the sign area variance and also the variance for the setback?
Yes, thank you.
Correct? Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? And we'll open to the public. Is there anyone who'd like to question this witness concerning his testimony? Or is there anyone who wants to make a statement concerning this application? And we'll close. I think you are going to be a person of few words.
I would respectfully request the board grant the use variance and the associated bulk variances. I think, Mr. Thomas, you sort of endorsed the school, and I think what we're doing here is a benefit, and it's a great location for the school. Thank you.
Anything from the board?
Yeah, I'll move the approval of the variance. There are two variances. I move the approval of the sign variance, both with respect to area and the 3-foot setback. I move the approval of the D1 variance for purposes of changing the use, subject to the limit of students being 100, maximum of 130, and with the following proposed waivers that was requested by the applicant with respect to Mr. Hauk's report, item 3, item 8, item 9, and item 24.
We have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All the board?
Mr. Betterbid?
Yes.
Ms. Grumman?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. McCracken?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Or
Mr. Rosenthal?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the final application for the evening, Ronald Snyder, ZBA 13-00019, 249 Lenox Avenue. Hardship variance, this is ZBA, I said 13-00019. Hardship variance in which the applicant is proposing to construct a 2,750 square foot home at 249 Lenox Avenue, Somerset, block 300, lots 19 through 21 in the R15 zone.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Peter Lanford appearing on behalf of the applicant. This is an application for a approval, as you indicated, to construct one single-family residential dwelling, and we need certain variances because we have an undersized lot. In conjunction with this application, if I could find my paperwork. As the board is well aware, having heard numerous applications for undersized lots, one of the obligations of the owner of the property or the applicant is to try to eliminate the nonconformance. There are adjacent properties to the subject property. I have sent letters to the adjoining property owners on July 18th, 2013, and those letters were sent by both certified mail and regular mail to the adjoining property owners. One of the property owners is named Carl and Magali Bampo Perry, and the other is Ecos Research, Inc. I do have, and I'm going to present to the board, my letter to them, as well as the certified mail receipt of the certified mailing, and I can indicate to the board that I did not receive any response to those letters.
All right, so I'm marking that A1 collectively?
That would be acceptable, Mr. Bradshaw.
Okay. And is there anybody here? Adjacent property owners? Okay, we're good.
Okay. In an effort to move this along, I'll just give you a little background. Mr. Snyder has owned this property for approximately 3 years. Mr. Snyder is a builder who has built numerous single-family residential dwellings in this general area and neighborhood. I will call 3 witnesses very briefly to explain what we are building. The engineering comments will be addressed, and then the planning testimony to support the variance. I will start with Mr. Druga, if he can be sworn, please.
Okay, sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Spell your last name for me.
Druga.
Okay.
Mr. Druga, you have to keep the microphone sort of close to your mouth. You're a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey?
That is correct.
And how long have you been so licensed?
Since 1976, about 37 years.
Okay. And you prepared the architectural plans that are the subject of this application?
Yes.
Okay, and you've worked with Mr. Snyder on numerous single-family residential dwellings?
Yes, I have.
And including some in Franklin Township in the immediate general neighborhood of the subject property?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the neighborhood that we are constructing the single-family residential
Yes, I
dwelling
am.
in? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Can you indicate to the board the house that we are constructing?
The house that Mr. Snyder proposes to build is a bi-level containing approximately 2,467 square feet. The lower level of the bi-level, you enter the bi-level in the midsection between the lower level and the upper level. The lower level contains a 2-car garage with 420 square feet. Living area on the lower level is a family room, a study that can be converted to a bedroom, bathroom, a full bathroom, and a utility area. The upper level contains the living room, dining room, kitchen, and 3 bedrooms, and a bath. The overall building dimensions are 30 feet deep, 40 foot wide on the lower level, and 32 feet deep and 40 foot wide on the upper level. The building will have vinyl siding, possibly brick or stone on the lower level in the front, asphalt shingles, and energy-efficient insulation and windows throughout.
Okay, and the dwelling itself is generally consistent with the types of dwellings that are located in that neighborhood?
Yes, it is. I visited the area and the neighborhood. There are several bi-levels in the neighborhood. There are colonials in the area, ranches in the area, and Cape Cod. So it's
Okay.
a mixed type of residential area.
So it's neither too big nor too small that would make it out of character with the neighborhood?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions of this witness.
The houses to the immediate right and left, can you make a comment about the size of them?
If he knows, and I know Mr. Gazali is a little bit familiar, at least as far as the setbacks, as far as the adjoining properties, perhaps he can,
Wait for that, okay.
There was one other issue that, again, Mr. Healy raised with respect to the size of this house, which would preclude any kind of future changes without coming back to the board. And the question was whether it made sense to reduce this house a little bit to make those potential changes possible.
actually, we sort of done that as you heard Mr. Druga's testimony. The house is 40 by 30. Mr. Gazali actually on his plans has it shown as being 45 feet wide, so actually the house will be smaller and therefore will afford somebody the opportunity, if they wanted to put a shed out there or a patio, to do it without having to come and see you wonderful
Okay.
people.
Thank you.
Is Mr. Gazali going to testify to what the coverages that result?
The exact numbers, I don't know if he brought his abacus with him, but if he doesn't have the exact reduction, we can get it for you.
You're finished with them?
I am finished with him.
There's not much public in terms of numbers. Would you like to ask a question? Ma'am, in the back,
She's
or is she with you?
she's with me.
Is there anybody out there who isn't?
I
All right,
don't
then
know who
we'll
this gentleman
we'll
is.
open once at the end.
Okay.
Just for the formality.
Okay, next witness.
Mr. Gazali. As he's quickly doing some math to make Mr. Healy happy.
Okay, sir, if you raise your right hand, you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And you are Robert Gazali?
That's right.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Gazali, you're a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey.
I am.
And you prepared the plot plan and variance plan, which is subject to this application.
I did.
Okay, first of all, can you describe the subject property?
Yes. The property is identified as lots 19 through 21 in Block 300. Street address is 249 Lenox Avenue. It's located on the east side of Lenox, between Clinton and Arden Street. It's a 75-foot wide by 100-foot deep property, 7,500 square feet in the R15 zone, which requires 15,000 square feet. It's currently a vacant wooded lot, and as I said, is on Lenox Avenue. Lenox Avenue is a paved local street. All public utilities exist within Lenox Avenue, and the proposed dwelling would connect to those utilities.
Can you indicate to the board the surrounding land uses around the subject property?
Right. To the north, or to the left, as you look at our sheet 1, is Lot 22, that is currently a vacant lot. Lot 17 to the south, or to the right on our sheet, contains a single-family dwelling.
And are you familiar with the single-family, how big is the lot to the right of us that contains a single-family dwelling? Approximately.
That lot's about 55 feet wide by 100 feet deep.
So it's a 5,500, it's smaller than the lot we're proposing.
Yes, it is.
And there is a dwelling on that lot?
Yes, there is.
Okay, and in relation to the setbacks on that dwelling, approximately how do they relate in relationship to the setbacks of our application?
That house is somewhat deeper than the house that we're proposing. Our house is proposed more or less at the front setback line required by the zone of 30 feet. The house adjacent to us is about 20 or 22 feet. However, the rear yards do line up more or less.
So at the rear, they're consistent, and we are at the setback line. The house next to us is in violation of the front yard setback.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, can you review with the board the variances that we are seeking in conjunction with this application?
Yes, we're requesting a variance for lot area. Our lot is existing at 7,500 square feet, where 15,000 square feet are required. We're requesting a variance for lot frontage. Our lot is 75 feet wide, where 100 feet is required. And we're requesting a rear yard setback variance. 50 feet is required by zone, and we are requesting 37 feet.
Okay. And as you indicated, that rear yard is consistent with at least the adjoining property as far as the rear yard is concerned?
Yes.
And we do in fact meet the side yard requirements or the separation from the adjoining property on our right, and if should there be a development of the vacant lot to the left, we will have adequate separation from the house to the left of us. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you indicate to the board, we did have certain impervious coverage and building coverage requirements. We were under the impervious coverage and the building coverage when we submitted the application as a result of the reduction of the size of the building. Can you indicate for the record what our impervious coverage would be and building coverage?
Right. My plan shows a 44.5-foot wide house. The actual house to be built is going to be 40 feet, so the lot coverage by building would drop from 19% to 16%, and the allowable impervious would increase by that amount, so someone would have an additional 135 square feet to work with.
Okay, and when we revise the plan with the new numbers, we will have the exact percentage. Is
Yes.
that correct? Okay.
Yes.
There were staff reports generated in conjunction with this application, were there not?
Yes, there were.
And you've had an opportunity to review those reports, and there is one issue in Mr. Hauk's report that we'd like to address with the board. Is that correct?
Yes.
And can you indicate what item that is?
That would be item number 9 on page 2 under general review comments, and it's a request to create a swale to prevent water from running onto adjacent properties, particularly along lot 55.01. We would just ask that, our plan is to not change the drainage patterns on the lot. The majority of this lot does drain towards Lenox, however, a portion of the rear yard does drain onto adjacent properties now, and would be difficult, if not impossible, for us to redirect that without clear-cutting every tree along the back line in order to create a swale. I would point out that the current drainage pattern is lot 17 to our south drains onto our property. Most of the water then goes to Lenox. However, some of it does continue to flow to the northeast onto adjacent rear yards.
So what would be your plan, instead of creating that swell to prevent runoff onto adjacent properties, and how would you prevent that additional runoff?
Well, there would be no additional runoff. We're proposing a dry well, which would be sized for all of the proposed new impervious coverage. So the only thing that would run onto adjacent properties would be lawn or whatever runs on to the adjacent properties now. So we would not, if anything, there would be a reduction, but it would be difficult to create a swale along the back line and carry that out to Lenox Avenue with a sufficient slope to prevent a future wet area.
So, to summarize, there is a portion of this property that does in fact drain to lot 5501 at the present time.
Yes, there's about a 20-foot wide strip along the back property line that heads in that direction.
Okay, and that 20-foot wide strip will continue to head in that direction. We're not proposing to change the drainage pattern.
Exactly.
Okay, and the drainage that is coming from the new impervious coverage from the house or the driveway will be contained on site by virtue of the dry well.
Right.
So we will not be adding any additional runoff to the adjoining properties.
That's true.
Okay. With respect to the issue of sidewalks and curbing, can you indicate to the board what is generally located in the vicinity of the subject property along Lenox Avenue as to curbing and sidewalk?
Right. Our frontage does not have curb or sidewalk. In fact, there are no curbs on Lenox whatsoever. The nearest sidewalk is 150 feet to our north. If you look at the key map or the vicinity plan, it would be in front of Lot 28. So we are requesting a waiver of constructing sidewalks and curb because it would be out of character for what's needed.
And I would think that if the board is so inclined to do so, that I think what we have talked about is requiring either the applicant put them in or pay for what the cost would be so they could be put someplace else in the township. I think that's what the condition that the board in the most recent applications has required. So I would ask that the board consider that if they're going to have the waiver. I think one of Mr. Lanford's applications a month or two ago, he did exactly the same thing, if the board is so inclined.
That would be a condition, but a question I would ask first is where does this area fit in on the sidewalk master plan?
You'd have to ask Mark about, because he's been doing that for several months now.
Well, yeah, I worked on it months ago, and there are hundreds of miles of road in the town, so I don't recall this
So your
particular
recommendation, you
street.
take the money.
Well, I think you could say work it out with Mark, you know, if.
Yeah, I don't know offhand, because, you know, Lennox Place in particular. Yeah, I think we could say if, do the payment in lieu.
That's fine. No further questions of this witness.
Any board questions?
Well, are you going to build the house that's generally reflected here?
That is, not generally, that is the house.
Because there's a little footnote, you know, all dimensions are approximate and subject to field variations and tolerances. Just want to make sure you're going to build a house that you represent.
That's what all architects put on their notes. But yeah, we're building what you're looking at.
Yeah, and you guys, almost every single time, I mean, Mr. Shepherd isn't here.
Mr. Shepherd
Yeah,
wasn't here, so I asked the question.
That's always the thing, that they build something that's substantially the same. You always give us a little leeway if, you know, something needs to change a little bit for whatever reason, but we make sure that when that's submitted, we review that to make sure it's substantially the same.
So the one thing, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to point out is, the reason I brought up the issue about the house size is that, I mean, this is a lot area variance. The minimum requirement is 15,000. They're proposing half of that. They're proposing a house that is, it's not large, but it's not exactly small either. I mean, it's a 2,400 square foot house. That's, I wish my house was that large. And they originally proposed, they were right at the limit. I mean, 15 square feet. They were basically creating a situation where if the applicant wanted to put down a concrete block, they were going to create more variances. With the new proposal, they've provided leeway of 135 square feet. So they'll be able to get a 10 by 10 shed, and then anything, in addition to that, again, they're going to be in a variance situation. So, I just bring that to the board's attention. They have given themselves a little bit, or the future buyer, a little bit more leeway. I wouldn't be surprised in 5-10 years from now, this site is before the board again for either impervious or coverage or building coverage. Whether you want to do something about that at this point or not is up to the board.
Okay, anything else? Any other witnesses?
I need planning testimony.
Mr. O'Brien, you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
Still, Kevin O'Brien.
Mr. O'Brien, given the hour, can you just briefly review with the board the criteria? Now we're talking about a hardship variance, correct?
Yes, we are.
Okay, can you indicate to the board the criterias for the hardship variance, what we must prove, what we did prove, and your conclusions?
This can be proven with a showing that there is a unique set of circumstances ascribed to the land itself, whether by its size or its shape or its topography. In addition to that, excuse me, in both addition to that and in lieu of that, depending upon the circumstances, one could also make an argument that the benefits of an application can outweigh the detriments, and that would be the other way to prove a bulk variance before the board. In this particular case, there are a number of unique circumstances that do affect this application. And if you take a look at the key map on sheet 1 of 2, there are 20 properties facing Lenox Avenue. And of those 20 properties on Lenox, 16 of them are non-conforming in terms of lot area and lot width. And in fact, for the record, I'm sorry to do this, but the non-conforming lots on Block 300 are 601, 11, 15, 16, 17, 28, 32, 37, 38, and on Block 340, lots 42, 43, 44, 47, 51, 62, 6401. And I won't cite them all, but the properties that are closest to the property in question are comparable in lot size and in fact are smaller than the proposed lot in front of you. The property in question is .1721 acres, and on Block 300, Lot 15 is .1125, Lot 16 is .1079, Lot 17 is .124, and across the street, Lot 62 is .1148, all less than or significantly less than what is being proposed. You've also heard testimony that no property is available for purchase. You've seen the buy-sell letters, and no one is interested in buying this property. And even if the property next door were to sell any additional land to this property, Lot 22 would then be non-conforming. The rear of the proposed house does line up with the rear of the house on the right-hand side on Lot 17. And that is one reason why the house has been pushed back, although starting at the forward lot line, but ending beyond where the rear lot line would allow them to go. And the reason for that is to line up with that house next door. The master plan does have a goal of maintain the diversity of housing, but encourage infill and stabilization of current residential areas rather than continuing sprawl patterns of development, and this application certainly meets the goal of providing infill housing. This application also supports various parts of the municipal land use law in sections A for alpha to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state which promote the general welfare. F for Foxtrot, to encourage the appropriate and efficient expenditure of public funds by the coordination of public development with land use policies. And lastly, item G for Golf, to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for residential purposes. Will there be a negative impact? The houses that are near us are similar in size, as you've heard both the architect and the engineer testify to. They are similar in setback, and they are similar in style. So there is no negative impact that will arise from this application to those homes that are nearby. This proposed house could be further back, but it's not. Could be more forward, but it's not, and instead is put in a place where it matches the homes that are nearby, so it will not be out of place. This application, first, is a classic hardship because of the size of the lot. This is an undersized lot, as you've heard, but it's in a neighborhood of undersized lots. The rear yard variance, rear yard setback variance, I believe is supported by the benefits outweigh the detriments argument in that it matches much better the houses that are nearby, rather than pulling this house forward and meeting that rear yard setback. Instead, that would be out of character with the homes that are nearby. And I would conclude that I believe this application can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantial impairment to the zone plan and zoning ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. I have no further questions of this board, of this witness, Mr. Chairman.
Anything from the board?
Is that a Freudian slip?
No. Just getting late.
Real quickly, Mr. O'Brien, can you just explain the purpose of the buy-sell letters and how that establishes the hardship? Just real quickly, just so the board understands why the buy-sell letters are sent out.
When an undersized lot exists and there is land nearby, the goal of the ordinance is to make properties conform. So in order to make this property conform, you would have to get land from a neighboring property. Or in the alternate, sell this property to adjoining landowners, which would help them conform or conform better. In this case, letters are sent out saying, we have a property here that we are willing to sell. Do you want to buy it from us? And that would help, for instance, the property to the right, lot number 17, better conform to the ordinance. Or if lot 22 were willing to sell this property owner some of their land, that would help make this property more conforming. However, none of those situations work because none of the adjoining property owners are willing to buy or to sell land to or from this property. And as I indicated before, if one were to buy land from the conforming lot next door, this would make them non-conforming, which would be another variance situation in front of you.
So then basically, in the absence of interest from those buy-sell letters, your client is essentially stuck with this lot. And then you need to prove that the house you're going to be put on here is not going to have substantial detriment to the neighborhood.
Correct, and I think stuck was the planning word that we were going to use.
That's what I learned in school, yes.
Anything else from the board? All right, there's no public open. So
There is no public.
make that note. One of the things I think I'd like to see as a condition, if this is approved, is whenever this is transferred to an end user to the building to sell the house, that the impervious coverage situation be explained in writing, so that that owner knows virtually nothing can be built without hearing and a variance, so that 5 years from now, there's not a swimming pool sitting there and someone comes in and says they didn't know. Like, that's a little extreme, but those kinds of things have happened before, so I don't see why an owner can't be informed by whoever the seller is going to be, and let them know they can't do anything without another variance, basically.
Well, that's not exactly accurate. We are now reducing.
Explain to them that they have 135 square, explain what the situation is. They could put a 10 by 13 shed, but anything else after that is a variance.
We will agree that when he prepares a contract to sell the property to a prospective buyer, we will put that buyer on notice as to what the requirements are for lot coverage so that he knows the limitations of what he may be able to do or not do on the property.
Thus, that'll be in the resolution, which will be conveyed to any further property.
Okay? Any other?
Are the taxes paid?
To my knowledge, they are. And if
I
they're,
wouldn't be here if they weren't.
if they aren't,
Well,
we'll
we
make
had a
sure they are.
written note, but
According to-
that was
according to-
sometimes.
No, it says third.
Mr. Snyder here, by the way?
Is due
Yeah, he's here.
in August.
If the taxes are not paid, I'll make sure they're paid immediately. I didn't get that.
Anything else?
And that would be a condition of any resolution as well.
No.
I didn't receive a notice that they weren't.
I think I read that third quarter is due in August.
That was in August, though.
That was in August.
That was in August. This,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
application has been sitting around.
November, right.
Yeah, the note was written before the due date, so either way, it'll get worked out.
They won't get sign off if the taxes aren't up to date. The taxes were up to date at the time of the application, and if they're not, when they want to get signed off, they'll have to pay, so,
And it'll be in the resolution.
yeah.
Any other board comments? Again, you're going to be a person of few words.
No words.
Anything from the board, including,
All right, I move approval of the application, lot area, proposed and existing variance, lot frontage, again, proposed and existing, and a rear yard setback of 37 feet where 50 feet is required. This is subject to the building being in 40-foot wide as testified to by the architect. It's subject to a payment in lieu of the cost of curbing and sidewalk to be worked out with Mr. Healy. I would, in light of the testimony with respect to drainage, I would propose a waiver of the proposed requirement that a swale be created. And that the resolution reflect the, any proposed end purchaser be put on notice of the coverage limitations.
Impervious coverage.
any other discussion?
Minor suggested modification to that the payment in lieu is just for the sidewalks, not for the curbs.
Oh, okay.
Shouldn't have said anything, he didn't object.
Well, you gotta treat everybody.
Yeah, you gotta be fair.
Do we ever do that, by the way?
What's that?
Do we ever do in lieu of for curbs as well?
No, the discussions in previous applications has always been sidewalks.
Sidewalks only?
Yeah.
Okay, poll the board.
Mr. Betterbid,
Four.
Ms. Grumman,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. McCracken.
Yes.
Mr. Rich.
Four.
Mr. Caldwell.
Yes.
Chairman Thomas.
Yes, is there a motion to adjourn?
Adjourned.
So moved.
Another easy night for Pete.